Hi, I'm Scott. In this video, I'm going to provide a brief demonstration on how to connect to your Raspberry Pi from a PC running the Windows operating system version 10, the home version. There are two main ways to connect to your Raspberry Pi from a remote computer. The first way is through the command line prompt. The second way is through a graphical user interface, the GUI. I'm going to discuss the different software tools you need to install and configure to complete this task, such as SSH, Secured Shell, PuTTY, VNC, both the client and the server. I'll also review Windows Remote Desktop, XRDP, and type VNC server. In this video, I'm going to review why would you need to remotely connect to your Raspberry Pi, and I'll review scenarios that cover the home environment as well as your work or office environment. So let's get started. To perform a command line connection between the Windows operating system PC and the Raspberry Pi PC, I needed to download, install the PuTTY software. I'll leave a link to it in my comment section below. To perform a connection between my Windows PC and my Raspberry Pi using the Graphical User Interface, I needed to download the RealVNC software, the client version. I'll leave a link to it in the comment section below. The latest version of the RASPBIAN operating system does not support the Windows Remote Desktop connection. And in order to do a GUI connection between the Windows PC and the Raspberry Pi, you'll need to download and install the RealVNC client software. The latest version of the RASPBIAN operating system is already preloaded with the RealVNC server software. That allows you to do the graphical user interface connection with the Windows PC. Also, the RASPBIAN operating system is pre-configured to allow you to do the command line interface with the Windows PC. So no additional software is needed to be installed. With older versions of the RASPBIAN operating system, people would use TightVNC and XRDP to connect between a Windows PC and a Raspberry Pi. With the new version of the RASPBIAN operating system being integrated with RealVNC, there's no longer a need to use any of those other tools. VNC stands for Virtual Network Computing. It's free, it's open source software. VNC software is an alternative to the RDP software, Remote Desktop Protocol. We're in our Raspberry Pi and we have the RaspBIAN OS operating system installed. It's the Graphical User Interface. So on here, when you install the RASPBIAN operating system, you automatically get the software VNC, the server version installed. So at the top of our window or the monitor, you see this little icon over here, black and blue. It's the VNC server. So if I click on that, I will actually see that this VNC server software has been installed automatically on my Raspberry Pi. Now this is fairly new, spring of 2018 this happened, so if you don't have this, you can upgrade your RASPBIAN operating system, and or you may need to upgrade your VNC server, and I'll show you later on how to do that in this video. So the first thing you notice here is our IP address for this Raspberry Pi. It's 192.168.0.12. And this is important. We'll need this when we go to the other computer, which will be the client. In my case, it's going to be a laptop running Windows. And we'll use this IP address to connect the client to the server. And just down here it tells you it's actually running. VNC server is running, and here is the IP address we need. At the same time, while I'm here in my Raspberry Pi in the RASPBIAN Operating System. I can go to the top left and go to this menu for applications, look at the preferences, come down here and look at the Raspberry Pi configuration, and will bring me to a multi-tab window. I'll go to interfaces, and right here we see two options. One is for SSH, for secured shell, and it comes disabled by default. And then there's the VNC, and it comes disabled by default. We just want to click these and enable them. So SSH will allow us to connect to our Raspberry Pi via a line command. And if we want to connect to our Raspberry Pi via the graphical user interface, we would need to enable the VNC option. So these are both enabled, and we'll demonstrate how to log on or how to remotely control the Raspberry Pi via both of these options. So we just click OK. Now at this point, all the software has been installed. The VNC was installed automatically by default with the RASPBIAN operating system, and everything has been configured. So we are good to go from the Raspberry Pi perspective. Okay, I'm in my Raspberry Pi, and I have the RASPBIAN operating system installed, and I'm using the graphical user interface, the GUI. Not everybody uses the GUI, so if you didn't want to use the GUI, here's how you would set up the Raspberry Pi to allow for a remote connection. So I'm going to simulate that by just going to the command prompt. So instead of having the GUI show up, you would be just at the command prompt. And at this point, you type in sudo raspi-config. So sudo raspi-config, and it brings up this window. And from this window, we will go down to the interface options. And in here, you'll see the windows or the options: P2 for SSH, secured shell, and P3 for VNC. So we would just highlight P2, press the enter key, and it says, would you like to enable this server? And we would say yes and hit enter. And it says it's SSH server is enabled. That'd be great. And we come back and do it again. And once again, SSH allows you to do the command line remote connection. But while we're in here, just to show you, this is how you would also do the graphical interface connection, is through VNC. So we'd have to enable that option. So we highlight that, select it, and it says, would you like to enable the VNC server? When we would, you can just move these around with your arrow keys. I'm just going to highlight yes and press enter. It tells you the VNC server is enabled. OK is highlighted. I'm pressing the enter key, and we're back here at the main screen. I'm done configuring the software, so I'm just pressing the arrow keys down to the bottom. Press the arrow key to the right to go to select. Press the arrow key right to finish. Highlight it, press the enter key, and we're done. So at this point, you're done configuring the Raspberry Pi computer via the RASPBIAN operating system via the line command. If I want to exit the line command box, I just type exit, and it takes me back to the graphical user interface. I'm on my Raspberry Pi with the RASPBIAN operating system installed, and I'm using the graphical user interface. Earlier we saw where we could get the IP address by clicking on the VNC icon, and it would display the IP address of this Raspberry Pi on my local area network as 192.168.0.12. So if you didn't have the graphical user interface running, how would you get the IP address? Well, there's a couple ways of doing that through the line command. One of them is you could ping the Raspberry Pi. So Raspberry Pi, and I would have local. Since I'm pinging myself, the Raspberry Pi is pinging itself. So you just type .local, hit enter, and it's going to keep pinging itself. So it's in an endless loop right now. We're going to press Control-C to stop that. And we'll see that it comes back with the IP address of 192.168.0.12, and that matches the IP address over here that the graphical user interface displayed. Another way to find the IP address via the command line is to type ifconfig, press enter, and this page of data will show up, and right in the middle of the screen you'll see an INET, and its value is 192.168.0.12, and that matches up with the IP address that was presented to us through the graphical user interface. So there's three different ways to find your IP address of your Raspberry Pi. One is through the graphical user interface via the VNC server icon. Another is through the ifconfig command. And the third is through pinging the Raspberry Pi itself through the ping RaspberryPi.Local. And don't forget that's going to put you in an endless loop, so to remember to do Control-C to stop the loop. Okay, so that tells us how we get the IP value that we will need to connect the client to the server. So when we go to our client software, in my case it's going to be a laptop with Windows on it, we're going to type in this IP address, and that's how the Windows laptop knows which machine, which PC to go connect to. I'm on my Windows laptop. It's running Windows 10 for home, and I have a folder on my desktop that contains software that's related to Raspberry Pi utilities that I use. To do a remote connection from my laptop running Windows, which would be the client, to my Raspberry Pi, which would be the host or the server, I'll need the following two pieces of software. I'll need PuTTY. It's capital P, small u, capital T, capital T, capital Y. And you can Google search that, and I'll also put the link to it down in the comments section. And you will need the VNC viewer for Windows. And you can Google that too, and I'll have the link for that down in my comments section. PuTTY will let you connect from the client to the host, or the client to the server, in this case the Windows laptop to the Raspberry Pi via the line command. So I double click on PuTTY, this opens up, and it's asking me to enter the IP address that we looked up in an earlier segment of this video, and I just click open, and now it's asking me to log on, and I enter this is my ID on my Raspberry Pi, and then it's asking me for a password for my Raspberry Pi, and there, I've just logged in to my Raspberry Pi. Right now I am connected from my laptop to my Raspberry Pi. I have control of my Raspberry Pi at this point, and I can do whatever I wanted to do in these commands. In this case I'm just going to exit and relinquish control, and I'm back to my Windows laptop. If I want to take over my Raspberry Pi from a graphical user interface perspective, instead of the command line, I would use the VNC viewer software. Just double click on that. I've already saved some settings for this IP address. It's going to prompt me for the ID and the password. Click OK, and now I've logged on to my Raspberry Pi remotely. So I'm remotely controlling my Raspberry Pi at this point. Right here it tells me the IP address of the PC I'm logged on, which is my Raspberry Pi. Over here is that VNC Software server, and it tells me there's my IP address, 192.168.0.12. So I'm on the right place. This black line is a drop-down menu that's used for the VNC server software. It's pretty cool. Gives you information. You can do chats. If somebody was actually logged on to that PC, that Raspberry Pi, I could chat with them. You can do file transfers from your Raspberry Pi to your laptop, or from your client to your server, and from your server to your client. You could reboot. You could do a Control-Alt-Delete to that Raspberry Pi from here. So it's pretty cool. You have lots of different options when you're controlling that server. So in this case, I'm just going to exit out of the session. It says, are you sure you want to disconnect? Yes. And at that point, I'm done. I'm back to my laptop with my Windows Operating System 10 for home. And that's it. That's how you can log on remotely from a Windows PC, a client, to your Raspberry Pi, serve as a server or a host. If you want to check what version of the VNC server you have on your Raspberry Pi, if you're in the with the RASPBIAN Operating System installed, if you're in the Graphical User Interface, you can go to the VNC software via the icon at the top, and go to the menu, and you can check click on check for updates, and it's going out to the web. Now I've set my Raspberry Pi up on my Wi-Fi, so it went out to the web, and it says, hey, VNC 6.3 is available. And I went to this earlier, and it came out in June 2018. So you might say, well, what version do I have? I go back to that menu, and I do about, and I'm on 6.2, so I would want to upgrade. So how do you go about upgrading? You can actually go to the line command and issue these, and these commands I'll have in the comment section where you can just copy and paste them. But sudo apt-get update, sudo apt-get update. And once you get the update, you're going to do the install. So sudo apt-get install, and we're going to do realvnc-vnc-server, realvnc-vnc-server. And it came back and says, hey, you're already in the newest version. What happened before I filmed this, as I've already executed these commands, and it went and got the 6.3 version and installed it. Now it's on the command. I'd have to reboot my Raspberry Pi to actually get to 6.3 to show up in the GUI. But I didn't want to do that because I wanted to show you how you could check the version, how you could go out and get it, how you can install it. So that's basically how you'll do it. The next time I reboot the Raspberry Pi and the Raspbian GUI shows up, it'll be in 6.3. These commands will be down in the comment section. Alright, this video I just wanted to demonstrate on how I have my laptop PC over here running Windows Operating System 10, the Home Edition. And over here I have the monitor connected to my Raspberry Pi, and it's running the Raspbian Operating System. So this Raspberry Pi has this wireless keyboard connected to it. This Raspberry Pi has this wireless mouse, this one with the turquoise stuff on it. And this Raspberry Pi is connected through this HDMI converter cable to VGA to this monitor. So this monitor right now is displaying the Raspbian Operating System, the Graphical User Interface for that. And then this laptop is displaying my Windows Operating System 10 Home Edition. And I'm using the monitor for the laptop and the keyboard for the laptop, and then this mouse here. So both these PCs, my laptop and my Raspberry Pi, are connected to my Wi-Fi. They're both on the same network. It's a local network. It's password protected. Nobody can get in. So I want to demonstrate how my laptop will be the client and the Raspberry Pi will be the server or the host. And I'm going to log on from my laptop onto my Raspberry Pi. And I'm going to use the VNC server, the Graphical User Interface. So with my laptop mouse, I'm going to go into the VNC software. And then I'm going to choose a pre-configured setting. And there's my IP address, and we've talked about that in the video. There's my user ID. And I'm going to type in the password. And then I'll click the OK button. And boom, just like that. I'm now logged on, connected to my Raspberry Pi, and the Raspberry Pi screen is being displayed on my laptop screen. Now, you could say I'm doing that with smoke and mirrors, so how can I prove that? Well, I'm going to go take the mouse connected to my Raspberry Pi, and I'm going to open up that VNC software package, and boom, you'll see it displayed on both screens, just like that. And so that's kind of cool. So I'm using my mouse, once again, using my mouse for my Raspberry Pi. I'm going to grab that window I just opened up, and I'm going to start moving it around. And look at that, it's moving on both screens, both monitors. So both monitors are displaying what's going on in the Raspberry Pi. Well, that's kind of cool, but I can also take my mouse for my laptop, and I'm going to go up and grab that window, that VNC server window, and start moving around, and you're going to see it moving around together. So I am, with my laptop, controlling my Raspberry Pi, a remote connection. What's even cooler is, so with my mouse for my laptop, I'm going to go to this VNC server box, and I'm going to close it. I'm going to click on the X, and you're going to see it disappear. Boom, just like that. So that is a remote connection. So what I don't want you to get hung up on is, oh, well, these are both connected together on the same local area network, on the same desk in the same room. These computers could be anywhere in my local area network. They could be in different rooms. They could be on different floors. They could be one in the garage. One could be out in the backyard on the deck. One could be in the shed. One could be across the street. One could be in my neighbor's house. Wherever my Wi-Fi reached, and if you had the password to log on, that's where the other computer would be at. And that's how you can remote connect and control a Raspberry Pi from another PC. By the way, you could also control a Raspberry Pi from another Raspberry Pi. Just think of it as a client and a host, or client and server. And they're just two different computers talking to one another. All right, that's it. In your home environment, you can have a Raspberry Pi in a different room, on a different floor. Heck, it might not even be in your house. They could be located everywhere in your environment, doing a whole multitude of tasks. You may want to do a remote connection to these Raspberry Pis from one location to control them all from just one area, say your office or say your couch in your living room. By doing a remote connection to a Raspberry Pi, you wouldn't have to buy a monitor, a keyboard, or a mouse for each of one of those. You would save a whole lot of money by doing the remote connections. If your Raspberry Pi was embedded in a robot, say with cameras for eyes, then you could actually see what your robot saw, because you would be remotely connected to your robot via the Raspberry Pi. In your work environment, if you had Raspberry Pis set up as servers, then these servers would reside in something called a server room. And you would access the servers in the server room from your desk. You wouldn't get up and go to the room. You would log on to your servers remotely from your desktop. Examples demonstrated in this video were performed on my home network, which is password protected. Exposing your Raspberry Pi to the internet is dangerous. Your home network would then be open to attacks. Alright, that wraps up this video that shows you how to install and configure software that lets you remotely connect to your Raspberry Pi. Hopefully this video I've exposed you to some new concepts regarding the Raspberry Pi and how computers communicate with one another. Keep watching my YouTube channels for future videos about the Raspberry Pi. I think you'll find it interesting, you'll find them entertaining, and hopefully you'll find them educational. To get automatic notifications of when I add content to my YouTube channel, just hit the red subscribe button below. If you like this video, click on the thumbs up. If you dislike this video, click on the thumbs down. If you have any feedback about this video, leave it in the comment section below. And remember, you're never too young to learn, and you're never too old to learn.